Welcome to Percolating Thoughts. We may be drinking the coffee, but we're spilling the tea too. All right, welcome to another episode of Percolating Thoughts. This month we're going to talk about boundaries when it comes to setting them, keeping them, honoring them, and then also, honoring someone else's and being respectful of someone else's. Belle, I'll tell you what, there have been multiple times where I've set boundaries and had a hard time keeping them when it comes to other people. And then I've definitely had a lot of people disrespect any boundaries that I've set. But what when you set a boundary, what do you kind of like look for, or what's the goal there?
I think. Sorry, my mom just ate my. Um, no, I think that. Sorry, ask that again because now I'm.
When you like look to set a boundary, what are like kind of the expectations and what are some ways that you kind of like communicate that to other people?
I think it depends on the person. I can be really bad about setting boundaries if it's someone that like maybe causes anxiety or maybe I don't see as often or we've had disagreements before. So sometimes I feel like those boundaries might just like for me might be unsaid. It's just kind of in my head that it's like if they cross this, then I need to step back or change something. And like, yeah, that can be unfair to certain people, but it's kind of like at a time you exhaust saying things to them
Hmm.
to make them listen that you kind of are just like, I don't want to have to say it again. I don't want to have to ask you to do this. But I do think that when I do set boundaries, it's like I'm very blunt about it. I'm like, that really sucked and I hated that. And so I would appreciate like if you know, did this or did that or things like that. Or if the conversation I don't want to happen happens more than once,
Hmm.
I tend to say like I really don't want to talk about that or that's not something that like makes me feel good.
Yeah,
So it's usually for me situationally how like when things like that happen, if that makes sense.
for sure, for sure. Have you had like I don't know, when someone sets a boundary with you, I guess, how do you react?
I think now fine. I think it's like, but I also appreciate if I don't know, you set the boundary before you start talking about something, if that makes sense. So, like, if you're complaining about something, do you want me to listen or do you want me to respond? Do you want me to be your friend or do you want me to be honest?
Mm-hmm.
And so that those are kind of things that I ask now for them to be able to set their boundaries because I still think that people have a hard time doing that if you don't.
Yeah.
Um, say that or give them the room to like be like, how would you like me to respond?
Mm-hmm.
But I think like if you set a boundary, that's slay, great, and I will try to respect it as much as possible. Um, but yeah, I think sometimes I try to get people to set those boundaries so that I know how I'm supposed to respond.
Right. And that's super smart too, because, it's always like walking on eggshells whenever you're trying to have those conversations and, you don't want to be like you don't want to ruin a relationship or someone's friendship because you weren't able to respect that or
Yeah.
that sort of thing. Um, so I guess has obviously I know the answer to this, but has someone disrespected a boundary of yours, and how would you have? Sorry, I'm trying to think of different questions to answer or ask. I guess I'll let you ask a question.
Okay.
Yeah.
um, do you think that, when people set these boundaries or you set boundaries that they can often be confused with, being rude or selfish? And has that happened to you? And you've had to kind of like what was your response to that, I guess, if it has happened?
Yeah, yeah, 1,000%. That actually has happened recently. And my thing is too, like, I get really defensive. Like, I am very impatient. I'm not one of those people who, like, if you ask me to basically repeat what I just said to you after I said it plain and clear and you're not respecting me, then that's when I get kind of upset about it. But, I had someone recently say, well, you shouldn't have to make or set certain boundaries for someone else on a day that's supposed to be yours, like that's selfish or whatever. And I was like, no, that's not me setting boundaries for someone else. That's me setting boundaries for me. And
Yeah.
this is what I really don't want to happen. And I would really appreciate it if it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And I would really appreciate if you respect that because then we're gonna have further issues. And I really don't want to have to it's not necessarily like a threat, but it's like, hey, just be forewarned if you cross this boundary that I've set numerous times and have
Yeah.
communicated that numerous times, then it's not gonna look good.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably my reaction to things because I feel like often more than not, people don't really listen to what I'm really saying, like really listen.
Mhm.
So there's that. What about you?
Yeah. I think it can be like I definitely seen maybe a boundary I've set portrayed as rude or selfish or unfair or um like, oh, but they're your family. You shouldn't be like that or whatever. And I think that's where people start to kind of ignore their boundaries
Yeah.
is when you're guilt tripped so many times. Yeah, I think that I've definitely seen my boundaries being called rude or selfish.
Mhm.
Um, Especially when it comes to family members or people who are close to you, where it's like, oh, well, they're like your family, and so you should just kind of put up with it. That kind of uh, like blood is thicker than water situation.
Mhm.
And I think like our generations before us have been such people pleasers, or you didn't have that, I don't know, maybe that community or that ability to stick up for yourself or the resources that we have. And so I think a lot of the times that we like those boundaries that I've set have been like, oh no, like you're gonna upset them. And so that's something that I think other generations are having to unlearn. And it's not that you're trying to be rude or hurtful or selfish. It's like you're saying this is what's beneficial for me.
Mhm.
Um, and I think also boundaries can always be negotiated. So if they don't like them, why don't you come back and we can kind of talk about it and we can figure out what works best for us, rather than just me. If like you don't like that boundary, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But I also don't think that you owe anybody an explanation either. And I think that's what people also struggle with is not getting an explanation.
Yeah. Oh, for sure, for sure. I've seen that numerous times. What is like a message? Because like a lot of people, like this generation, I feel like they're definitely people pleasers, and they definitely want to make sure nobody stays mad or is just like in a bad mood. Like nobody wants to be walking on eggshells.
Mhm.
So, what's a piece of advice you would give to like this generation or this next generation as they um kind of navigate waters like that may where boundaries may be necessary?
I think my advice is like, what's best for you. And if you think that a relationship that you're in, whether that's work, personal, your partner, your family, whatever, that you kind of create that boundary that's not like controlling, but it is helping you with whatever. So for some people, that might be I don't socialize with my coworkers outside of work.
Mm.
Um, but if you set that, that's great. But if it comes to a point where you're like, oh, this could be really fun, maybe I should go do this with my coworkers, be willing to change them and see how that feels. And then if you like really hate it, however you changed it, go back. I think like boundaries are meant to be set and reset and relooked at
Mm,
circumstantially because it's going to be different for everybody that you know. Um, and it's being willing to also kind of meet people where they're at. And so I think like that would be my advice is just like every boundary is different and it's okay to change it. You don't have to stick with that boundary if it no longer serves a purpose.
mhm,
Or it might just be like the example I use for work. It might just be that you have that one work friend you really want to hang out with, and that boundary still sets for everyone else.
mhm.
And I think that's okay. I think um, we don't talk about it enough, but you need a third space outside of work and outside of your home. And sometimes it can be hard to have that if like you the only people you surround yourself with are the people you work with, are the people who you're seeing every day. Sometimes you just need that break.
Yeah, for sure.
What about you? What would you
Um,
advise them?
yeah, I'd say definitely be, mindful and be willing to, set your own boundaries. Just it's more so with for like protecting yourself and your inner peace and um maybe keep you sane on most days. But the thing is to like don't try to cross anybody else's boundaries, don't manipulate, don't, guilt trip anybody into, them breaking their boundaries because that's not fair. And they have, walls up for a reason, I'm sure. And um, it's okay to kind of encourage them to tear those walls down, but also like don't do it in a harmful way. Um, and my big thing is to like just if someone tells you something one time, don't try to if they tell you no, I don't want to talk about this, don't try to bring it up again. It's
Mhm.
not that hard. Um, and it's really not that big of a deal. So, and it's honestly like causing more harm than it is good by you asking.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what I would have.
Yeah. Do you think that boundaries become easier or harder with age?
For me, they become easier just because I've kind of been able, like growing up as a people pleaser, I've been able to kind of realize what I needed and become my own person and then be like, here's what we're not gonna do.
Yeah.
And then go from there. But like you said, they can be broken, they can be rewritten, they can be reworked. So there have been, those chances, but it's also really hard to keep them together,
Yeah.
So just because of the amount of manipulation and guilt tripping that I have been through and seen. Uh,
Yeah.
so I would say easier as an adult, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think for me, it's a mix of both. It depends on who it is. I think it was easier for me as a kid because I was that, shy kid who didn't talk to anybody, who didn't have an opinion.
Mm,
Um, and so like I feel like those boundaries were just set for me because I was just like this quiet kid and you didn't have to worry about me or you didn't have like I was just like there.
mm,
And I think it's gotten harder as I've gotten older because I have more opinions or I protect my peace more or maybe we disagree on something. And so I think especially when it comes to people who are closest to you that you've been with for like a long period of time, especially like from childhood to adulthood, etc. That you like for me, it's harder because they want you to be an adult in a certain way than maybe you want to be.
mhm,
And so it's a mix of both. It kind of depends on who it is or circumstances of whatever the event is or what they're asking of you and this is without saying too much but I think that it can be harder as you become older because people think that you should be more available to
mhm.
them
Yeah.
and it's hard for them to realize that maybe that availability especially as you get married and have kids or you live in different states now, can be harder to make happen. And you're going to make time for the people you want to make time for. And that's okay to say, like, no, actually, I can go visit that person. And it's okay if I choose to visit them over visiting like you.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like the hardest boundary I've been able to set as I've gotten older is like, oh, but you travel so much. Why can't you come here? Because I chose it not to come, and somebody coming to visit me or me going to visit them, it's because I enjoy it, because I want to be there. And I'm gonna put the effort into that rather than somewhere where I don't want to be or I don't feel welcome.
Yeah,
So I think it's a mix of both. And again, it just depends on who it is.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so that was our spiel about boundaries. And if you have any questions or need any advice, we're not experts per se, but we can definitely lend an ear and listen and that sort of thing. So feel free to comment down below, DM us. We love to hear from you guys. And without further ado, cheers!